It's NFC South Day on the Athletic Football Show. And Derrik, I am of the opinion that this division gets too much unnecessary flack. I'm genuinely looking forward to several of the conversations that we're going to have on this show. Are we going to talk about the weird Saints team that's quarterbacked by some combination of Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck? Yes. But other than that, I find the other three teams in this division really intriguing, and I am genuinely excited about digging into this.
Okay, so that's why I think this is going to be really fun, because I think I am of the opinion that I don't really care so much about the other three teams, and I am weirdly interested in the Saints. So this is going to be a very bizarre conversation.
You have been on one all week. I mean, you picking Josh Connerly to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like, I'm really impressed by the weird energy that you brought to this entire process.
If everyone is going to be all in on the Washington narrative, I mean, somebody's got to be the beneficiary of that.
Okay, but the Saints, that's disgusting. But we'll get to it. It's fine.
Dave, I know that you're like a weird NFC South sicko, so I feel like we're kindred spirits here in how we're approaching this show.
This is the division I grew up in. So yeah, I am. And I think it's funny because I'm a cynical person in my day-to-day life. I think most people would say that, but in my football watching life, I want to believe the best about people. I want things to be good. I want to see the best case scenario. I want people to have hope for their team. So I've become a little bit of an NFC South weirdo here over the last 3 years, where I'm like, there's more going on here than the Bucs. And by the way, not enough people like the Bucs either. So I'm happy to wear that mantle. I will ride for this division anytime.
Speaking of the Bucs, here's our Bucs preview for the 2025 season. Their offseason in 60 seconds. Josh Grizzard, promoted to offensive coordinator from passing game coordinator. They kept Kevin Carberry, their offensive line coach, and promoted him to the run game coordinator. Retained Chris Godwin, 3 years, $66 million, $44 million guaranteed. Signed Hassan Reddick, 1 year, $14 million. Brought back Ben Bredesen, who was on a cheap deal last year, 3 years, $22 million, $12.5 guaranteed. Retained Levante David, 1 year, $9 million. He's going to be getting that contract into perpetuity until we're all like 70 years old. In the draft, Emeka Egbuka in the first round, 19th overall. Cornerback Benjamin Morrison in the second round. Doubled up on corner with Jacob Parrish in the third round, 84th overall. Drafted edge David Walker in the fourth round. He is out for the season, unfortunately. Lost Robert Hainsey and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka in free agency. Let's dig into it. Derrik, what are you excited about watching with the 2025 Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I did some simple math here to pick my answer. The most exciting part about this team in general is the offense, and the only really new exciting thing that they did around the offense was drafting Emeka Egbuka in the first round. So I'm just really excited to see how that turns out. I believed that from the moment they drafted him. Before we knew about like how long is Godwin's timeline going to be, like is Jalen McMillan going to be banged up, all that. Before we knew any of that, it was fascinating to me that they decided they wanted to get out ahead of having so many of these older receivers and go out and draft Emeka Egbuka. Maybe it was contingency plan for those guys. Maybe it was them just wanting to stave off some regression with all the change that they were going to have and just load up on as much receivers talent as possible. But I think he was weirdly universally agreed upon as like, if any wide receiver just comes in as a rookie and has like 900 very solid yards, it's going to be Emeka Egbuka. And I'm very excited to see how that unfolds for him this year.
What do you think about his ceiling as a player? Because I think he's been painted as this guy who can walk in from day one and be a useful player in an NFL offense. And every single report from Bucs training camp is that this is a 10-year pro who is going to have the exact season that you're talking about. But I wonder, is there another gear to this, especially if Chris Godwin misses significant time and he's going to be put into a role where he's getting a Chris Godwin-esque workload in this offense? I may or may not be asking you this because I ended up with Emeka Egbuka in my rookie draft earlier this week, and now I'm trying to figure out how excited I should be about this.
I mean, I tend to think that you should be pretty excited. He's never going to be as explosive as, you know, some of the Brian Thomas Jr.'s that we got last year, or Malik Neighbors, any of those guys. But like, if he is, I don't know, the 9th best receiver in the way that like Amon-Ra St. Brown can be, where he's just incredibly stable, really good blocker. You can move him around a little bit inside and outside, just incredibly tough and reliable. I think that's probably his best outcome. But again, given that I expect him to at least get whatever his B- outcome is, I won't be shocked if by year 4, year 5, he looks like that kind of player.
You know why all these people like Egbuka so much, right? I figured this out over the last couple of weeks. It's because, yeah, if you watched the highlights, you probably saw his catch against Pittsburgh. You know what he can do as a receiver. but they trust him to do the dirty work. Like, they trusted Emeka Egbuka. By and large, a rookie receiver's not going to come in and be a guy that you can count on to go, get across the formation and just drive the safety out of the play, right? But I think they trust him to do that. That's what people talk about when they say he's a high IQ player. He can do all that stuff. He's not just here to catch the football. And in my experience, that gets coaches very excited.
I'm not sure if I'm being just too reductionist here because they're playing in the same team with the same uniform, but the way that Chris Godwin is a really good receiver in the NFL feels like the way that Emeka Egbuka in a lot of different facets can be a really good receiver in the NFL. Maybe that's too simple of an answer, but that's just one of the first guys that comes to mind. It's like Chris Godwin, when healthy in the right situations, has been unbelievably productive, and it feels like Emeka Egbuka can be similar to that archetype of player.
And what's funny is that, like, I think with Godwin in general, it's like, okay, he's a decent yak player, but he's not super fast. He just has, like, great vision, and he's tough and all this stuff. But, like, Egbuka is the same way. I mean, we envision Egbuka as, like, this, slot, he blocks, he catches over the middle, all that stuff. But, like, all their designery last year in the Ohio State offense was for him. And we don't imagine him being that kind of speed guy, but he's just really good with the ball in his hands.
What I'm most excited about watching with the Bucs is that this was the most exciting offense in the league last year for stretches of last season. When you're removing truly elite quarterback play, like the best quarterbacks in the league, this was probably the offense I enjoyed watching the most last season. There were so many layers to what made this offense great, whether it was some of the things they schemed up in the passing game. Like, go to YouTube, and if there's like a Jalen McMillan highlight reel, just go watch that, because it's really just a Liam Cohen highlight reel. Like, that is a look at the structure of this thing and how easy we're making it on the players. If you look at some of the numbers Baker had on just throws behind the line of scrimmage, I mean, the only team, I think they actually might have been dead last. I think they were dead last in the league in air yards to the sticks. The Bucs were last year, and they were one of the most dynamic offenses in football, and Baker threw 41 touchdowns. This thing and the levers that they were pulling with Liam Cohen, and that's before you even get to the run game, which was incredibly well designed. Bucky Irving comes in and adds an entire another gear to this thing. Mike Evans is still playing at an incredibly high level. And oh yeah, this might be one of the best 4 or 5 offensive lines in the league, with a quarterback that, even if he's an imperfect player, he's fun to watch. I mean, what he's bringing every single week, I'm happy to tune in for it. So I know we're going to talk about some of the barriers to them being that sort of offense again, but just in terms of appointment viewing on a Sunday or on a Monday when I'm turning on an offense that I think probably did something cool yesterday, this is near the top of the list, and I'm just excited about what the encore presentation looks like.
It would be that much closer to the top of the list if they could stop getting banged up, though. And that's
one of the downsides here.
I was so much more excited, and I still am. I still am excited about the Bucs, but before we started doing previews, like back in June when I was formulating the stuff I wanted to say on the show, I was ready to say that I thought the Bucs were a slam dunk Super Bowl contender. Like, I would have put them at the table. And then Tristan Wirfs needs a knee scope, and Chris Godwin, we know, isn't going to be back until October. Now Jalen McMillan has this neck strain where they're already saying he's out for half the year. They can overcome that stuff, but it dampens my excitement a little bit. Like, instead of this is a Super Bowl contender and people need to know about it, now I'm like, I hope they can reach that ceiling.
Let's spin it positively for a second. Like, the best case scenario here. Godwin and Wirfs, I think Godwin got taken off the PUP list, and his timeline return to play is potentially like early October. So let's just say Egbuka can hold down that number 2 receiver role within the offense until Godwin gets back, and you drop Godwin, even as a slightly diminished version of himself, back into this thing in October with Tristan Wirfs at the same time, and Josh Grizzard, who we're going to talk about here in a second, gives you something in the realm of what Liam Cohen did last year. We can get there. Like, it might be a little bit harder, but we can get there, and I'm trying to believe in that version of this thing because I want to watch it again.
Well, and like for me, I do not think they will be as good as they were last year, even if everything goes right. However, if the passing game is as good as it was in 2023, and then the run game is like competent in a way that in 2023 they had none of, then like, yeah, this is still, I don't know, the 12th best offense in the NFL, which again is not as exciting as last year, but still pretty dang good.
Let's get to the swing points for the 2025 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Derrik, why don't you kick us off? Where could this year pivot in your mind for the Bucs?
I think it kind of has to be Hassan Reddick for me. Like this was I know that this was a Bucs team where if you look at pressure rates and stuff, they weren't that bad, but that's because Todd Bowles is an insane person and turned up the pressure dial a lot. And they were just throwing a lot of bodies at the problem. But I think when you watched on like a player quality basis, this was just not a team that outside of Yaya Diaby really had guys off the edge who could get to the quarterback. They are making a huge bet on Hassan Reddick, who did not play a lot of football last year. To really be like a huge contributor. And there's a chance that he can do it because in the handful of years before last season, he was one of the most like surefire, this guy's going to get 11 sacks and we don't even have to think about it type of players. It's just that when you take, kind of a year off of football and are, transitioning to another new team, I just wonder what that's going to look like.
Let's say that doesn't happen. Hassan Reddick is going to turn 31 a month from today. So this is age 31 season, and he did not play football for the most part last year. If this does not go well, how concerned are you about the current state of the Bucs pass rush and the Bucs front overall?
Pretty concerned because they didn't really do any other things. Like I know that they've drafted a couple of other guys, but you mentioned
And they lost Walker for the year.
right. The guy that they drafted to potentially help them here is already out for the year. And like again, none of the other guys to me on the roster are like big time pass rushers. Like I think Anthony Nelson is a smart player who gives them some stuff in terms of like the drop into coverage flexibility, but he's not a superior pass rusher. And Chris Braswell, I think, is a really good run defending number 2 edge. He's not a pass rusher. And so if they're not going to get any of these other guys to contribute the way that they would need them to, they either, again, really need Reddick to be this player or like Kalijah Kancey just becomes Grady Jarrett, which I mean, I guess could happen, but that also doesn't solve the edge issue. So I don't know.
It definitely won't be good. I'm not as concerned as I would be just because of who is coaching the Bucs defense. Derrik, I think you and I talked about this a few weeks ago. We talked about Hassan Reddick as a potential DNA changer for this team. And the funny thing about the Bucs is even without dominant edge rushers, they're top 3 in the league in sacks since Bowles got to Tampa Bay. And we know he loves to blitz, he loves to bring pressure. They'll get pressure by hook or by crook, they'll do it. But that's why I think it's so important because it's such a floor raiser if you have that guy who can do it on the edge without needing to send extra people. So I think they can get by, but I think it will make them so much more dangerous and such a better team if Reddick is that guy.
Yeah, if all the extra that you're doing to get to the quarterback is at the expense of also giving up a bunch of other passes, then it's
Right.
ultimately not worth it. And I think that's why they've arrived at taking the swing on a guy like Reddick.
I wanted to look up a number while you guys were talking. I'd done this earlier today. I was trying to find it. They were bottom 8 in the NFL in pass defense success rate when blitzing last year, according to Next Gen. So they do blitz a lot. It's not necessarily a good thing that they have to blitz that much. They were the only team in the league that blitzed on more than half of the other team's third down dropbacks last year. And we'll talk about the secondary in a second, and there's a chance the secondary is better, and that makes the formula they're using on defense a little bit easier to live with. But if you're, I just think back to like the 2021 version of this team, and I know that that's a long time ago now, but when you have dudes and you're bringing 5 all the time, that's when things start to feel overwhelming. And that's when you watch this version of the Bucs defense, it feels erratic in what they're having to do, not overwhelming. And I think transitioning back to that's what you're trying to do by bringing in a guy like Hassan Reddick and hoping the combination of him, Kancey, Diaby can all collectively bring this group together in a way that just hasn't over the last couple of years.
Totally. And yeah, when we talked about it, they haven't had a reliable guy on the edge since Shaq Barrett was doing his thing back when they were a Super Bowl contender. And you're so right. I mean, for as good of a reputation as Todd Bowles has, they wound up in shootouts a lot last year. Like it's not a fun way to live. And that's why I do have really high hopes for what Reddick can be because it changes the DNA of that defense if there is somebody that can win without needing to send the extra pressure.
My swing point here is just what Baker Mayfield looks like in high leverage situations because he was incredible in high leverage situations last year. He was second in the NFL in dropback success rate on third down, only behind Patrick Mahomes. The Bucs as a team last year per True Media, had the 6th best third down conversion rate of the past 25 years. If you look at it and the teams that are on that list, it's like the 2011 Saints, the 2006 Colts, the 2004 Vikings and Dante Culpepper's like MVP-esque season with Randy Moss, the 2001 Rams, the 2022 Bills. Like, for the most part, these are historically good offenses or offenses with MVP level quarterback play. So I just wonder if they're going to fall off. That's not going to happen again. How much of a fall off is there? And this extends not just to what's happening on third down, but what's happening when things get really dirty and muddy for Baker Mayfield specifically. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the summer, Derrik, but if you look at the numbers when he was pressured, the only guys who had a higher dropback success rate when pressured last year than Baker Mayfield per next gen were Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, and Joe Burrow. He was 3rd in the NFL in EPA per dropback behind Lamar and Allen on plays where he was pressured. If you look at the last 5 or so years, he was above average in 2023, but not overwhelmingly good. And he was near the top of the league in EPA per dropback. But in 2022, he was dead last in success rate when pressured, and he was bottom 4 in 2021. So this has been an issue for him. It's just the last couple years have been better, and last year was significantly better. So if this goes from top 3-ish rates and all of this stuff that's not always sticky down outside the top 10 again, what does that mean overall for the Bucs offense?
And it's probably not going to be sticky because the guys who end up in the top 5 or 6 in a lot of those categories in a given year, you get, the Josh Allens or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson's, guys who over time have proven that they have that sort of skill set. And then you get a handful of guys who just kind of had a very fortunate season. And that's more how I feel about Baker Mayfield. And that's not to totally take away from him. We've talked about it on different shows. He's a much better scrambler now than I think he was earlier in his career. And that is certainly part of it. And I do think when you watch him, he is a little bit more structured and a little bit more stable and a little bit more settled in the pocket and willing to make some of those throws. In 2020, even in 2023, I was like, okay, he's doing some good stuff, but he still has a ways to go here. 2024, that really felt like the big move up for him. But again, even with that in mind, he's still not Lamar Jackson. He's still not Josh. He's still not one of those guys. It's a lot more likely that he is, and the passing offense is, I don't know, again, 11th, 12th, 13th in a lot of these categories than him repeating top 5 in a lot of that stuff.
I think this team will be good, and I'm excited about it. One of my just kind of lingering doubts and bits of skepticism here is that they just went on a heater at the craps table for 6 straight hours last year. That's what it feels like.
And Baker's that kind of quarterback, right? He's just going to do it, and when it looks good, it looks good.
And the scramble thing is a great thing to bring up. I mean, he was one of the most efficient scramblers in the league last season. Only Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and Kyler created more EPA on scrambles last year when pressured than Baker Mayfield. So that's kind of what I mean. There were elements of luck here in how this went in some of these non-sticky areas. You throw the screen game in there too and how hot they ran on screens last year. So just where does all of this fall, to me, is one of the areas where this season will pivot for the Bucs. Let's get to what's keeping us up at night about this Tampa Bay team. Dave, why don't you kick us off? What is keeping you up at night about the Buccaneers?
I just gave Todd Bowles a big vote of confidence a minute ago, but I'm looking over this team, and if we can separate ourselves from the aura of Lavonte David, have you looked at the depth chart for the rest of the linebackers on this team? Other than Lavonte David, who's 35, and he's still playing well. I'm not trying to say that he's completely fallen off a cliff, but it's 35-year-old Lavonte David. And then what? Because Anthony Walker is the other veteran. He hasn't had a training camp. It sounds like he's on his way back, but he's not back right now. Dennis Servassier is the next name that you probably
Excuse me.
Other way around.
Servassier Dennis.
See, that's the problem right there.
I don't think he's that bad. I think he's kind of okay. He's good moving forward. Backwards in coverage, we've talked about this coverage unit, but moving forward, he's not that bad.
Is it enough to feel like that is that's your only line of defense from the back end of your depth chart?
I have to believe that Servassier Dennis could be a good NFL player because I need Servassier Dennis to be a prominent part of my life.
I mean, it is an incredible name. Deion Jones is on this depth chart, guys.
Okay, that one I'm not going to defend. That ship has sailed. I'm sorry.
Not in the big 2025, you're not. Yeah, and so it feels like you're asking Levante David to do a lot of heavy lifting at the age of 35, which to this point in his career, he has been capable of that. But
Devil's
the,
advocate.
the cliff comes for all, even sports hipsters' favorite linebacker.
I mean, by the way, he still is fine. There
He's
was a
still good,
play
yeah.
in the Washington game, in the wild card game, where Jaden Daniels is scrambling and he chases Jaden Daniels down on a third down and like knocks him out of bounds at the sticks. And I was just like, good Lord, 34-year-old Levante David. The devil's advocate point here is that the Bucs' other linebacker other than Levante David has been bad for a very long time. Like since Devin White had that hot stretch a couple years ago, this has been a concern for this team. And I do think if all the other pieces on the defense, which we'll talk about here in a second, are better than they've been over the last couple of years, they can survive this.
How much confidence do you have that all of that stuff happens, though?
Well, let's get to that. So what I'm watching over the first month of the season here, what does this DB room shake out like? Because they drafted 2 guys on day 2 that I think had a chance to start coming into this season. Jacob Parrish, I think, is going to be this team's nickel corner from day 1. They're moving Tyke Smith, who also had some really impressive moments last year as their nickel. I think he is a good player. He's moving to that other safety spot next to Antoine Whitfield. Jacob Parrish is going to be the nickel here. And then Benjamin Morrison's been banged up a little bit in camp. And so it sounds like they're going to start the season with Jamel Dean at that right cornerback spot. But if Benjamin Morrison can eventually crack the lineup, overtake him, and now we have kind of what amounts to 3 new starters in the secondary with Zion McCollum, who's a solid player, and with Antoine Winfield Jr. And this is a group that goes from shaky and uneven to something that we can really trust and becomes a strength of this defense. Then I do think that we can be just talking about a different sort of unit. Like we'll just feel different about the Bucs defense over the course of the year. That's like a pie in the sky version of this. But if that happens, then that's one of the things that I feel like could take this team to a level where we're going into the playoffs thinking about them differently than we have over the last couple years.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like I struggle a little bit to be super optimistic because again, these are second and third round picks. You know, Tyke Smith himself, even though he was impressive, is a 3rd round pick from last year who's moving positions. It's a lot of like, this is not like top 10 picks that are going to come change the defense. At the same time, a lot of the guys outside of Zion McCollum, and especially when Antoine Winfield wasn't playing, were just like straight up bad last year. And obviously, you know, Tyke Smith was at the nickel, but now he's not, so that's a little bit complicated. But if they can just be 10% better than they were last year, and Hassan Reddick gives you anything, that at least gets this defense closer to average instead of getting bludgeoned on every single passing down. And I think that could go a decent way. And like Benjamin Morrison is a tough case because he had so many injuries in college and he's dealing with some again. And so who knows with that one, but like Jacob Parrish is a scrappy son of a gun, man. I kind of liked him, and Tyke Smith, I think he has enough to him that I think moving to safety is not going to be that crazy for him. So I am, again, I don't know about optimistic, but certainly intrigued.
There's
I would
a path.
also
That's how I see
yeah.
it. There is a path for this secondary to feel very different this year than it did at the end of last year when we had Mike Edwards. And I mean, there's just they were piecing this thing together last season with concerns about the pass rush, and at least there are options this year.
It's worth noting. Yeah, if Antoine Winfield's healthy, it just makes me feel better about everything. I mean, he played half the season last year, and I thought he was the best safety in football in 2023. I really did. I thought he was incredible. And if he's even close to that level, it just lessens my concern about all the stuff back there.
Dave, what are you watching over the first month of the season for the Bucs?
So, full transparency, this was going to be the thing that was keeping me awake at night because I am a big law of averages guy. And so for me, I look at Todd Bowles, who is a defensive-minded head coach, a conservative head coach, painfully so most of the time. He's not somebody that you think of as like at the forefront of the offensive revolution. So I'm sitting there thinking, what are the odds that Todd Bowles did this again and nailed his OC hire after the last 2 became head coaches? Like, just what are the odds that it works out that well 3 times in a row? So I've been worried about that for the entire offseason, really, from the minute it was obvious that Liam Cohen was going to change his mind and go to Jacksonville. Then you start digging into Josh Grizzard, and now I'm like, okay, I have a firm degree of confidence that Todd Bowles actually did do this again. And I'll get into it. Number one, it's worth pointing out too, like again, I don't think people give Todd the credit that you might give a Sean McVay for identifying coaching talent. Dave Canales and Liam Cohen came in from not in, like, he had no prior relationship with those guys. They came in from Seattle and LA respectively. Whether, he got help from his network or whatever, he identified those guys himself. And then last year, when Liam Cohen's here, he tabs Josh Grizzard from Miami, who is working under Mike McDaniel. And for me, when I hear Mike McDaniel, for all the critiques we might have about the Dolphins, that gets me excited from just a play calling and design standpoint. Guy played at Yale, got his master's at Duke, worked under David Cutcliffe while he was at Duke. He's been with Adam Gase and now Mike McDaniel in the Dolphins. He was in Miami for quite a while. And by the way, he crossed paths with Ben Johnson while he was there, and they have a relationship as well. Like, the guy's got connections to all the people that you would want your OC to have connections to. And he was here with Liam Cohen last year. Like, it's not like he's coming in blind like Canales and Cohen did. He spent the year in Tampa working with Cohen. Cohen tried to bring him to Jacksonville, and the Jags blocked it. So I hear all of that stuff, and it's incredibly intriguing. We know the Bucs have good offensive talent. I did a total 180 from thinking like, what are the odds that this will be a good hire again, to like, I think this was a pretty good hire.
My concern, I think that they'll be fine, right? Like, I have faith in this working. I think retaining Kevin Carberry, their offensive line coach and the run game coordinator, based on how the run game was structured last year, is something that you can get excited about. For me, it's just how far do they fall down? Is this going from the 4th best offense in the league to the 8th best offense in the league? Or is this going from the 4th best offense in the league to the 14th best offense in the league? And I just don't know where that's going to land. And that's why I don't know how to feel about what this team is going to be this year.
Is it a guarantee that they fall that far? Like, I mean,
Yes.
okay.
I think
okay.
I think it's going to be very hard for them to be as good as they were last season. Just for all the reasons I said, for like in those high leverage moments, in these things that tend to be volatile. So what is it? Is it, again, are they still like a firmly top 10 unit, or does this fall? They were 20th in a lot of the metrics that you want to look at from 2023 before Liam Cohen got there. The offensive line talent is undeniably better. You drop Graham Barton in, Cody Mauch takes a step forward in year 2. Gadecki has really leveled up. Bredesen was a nice little find. We know what Tristan Wirfs is. That group is better than it was in 2023. But a lot of the other component parts were similar to what they were under Canales when they were a slightly below average offense. So between those two poles, what they were with Liam Cohen and what they were with Canales, where do they fall with Grizzard? Because if the defense isn't going to be objectively very good, the offense is going to have to carry this thing. And I wonder how much firepower they're going to have to do that.
I think they can do it. And yeah, I mean, repeating as a top 5 offense is maybe, I'm not willing to be that bold, but like, especially if we're getting a healthy amount of games from Tristan Wirfs, like, I feel pretty good about it.
Just like little things, like Grizzard is figuring out whether he still wants to call plays from the sideline or the booth. Like, that's something they're still working through. That doesn't mean anything.
That makes me itchy.
Might be
the
great.
fact that they're thinking about that makes me itchy. I don't love that.
It's a product, and it's just something to keep in mind when you've never done this before. Even if the ideas are good, there is going to be uncertainty with how it's ultimately going to manifest with this offense. And until we know how good the defense is going to be, I think that has to be at front of mind. And especially when you consider the goals that this team has this year. So let's talk about that. Dave, in your mind, what does success look like for the 2025 Bucs?
I mean, I think there's no reason to think if this team is as good as I think they are or as good as they think they are, like, they should win the division again, get back to the playoffs, and just look like you belong. Whether that means winning a wild card game or just playing a really competitive wild card game, I'd like to see them get back to divisional weekend. And much like 2 years ago, like, if they get to divisional weekend and they look like they belong in that final 8, that's pretty good. I'd love to see them take that next step. Like I said, I'm so tempted to say that I think they're a conference championship game kind of team, but there's just enough uncertainty with the personnel, with the injuries, and then the new coach on the offensive side. There's enough there where I can't go that far, but divisional weekend would be nice.
I think I've landed on just stave off the Falcons. Like, whatever that means and whatever that requires, that to me, I think is success.
That's not enough for me. They've done that the last couple years. I want to see some sort of progress, even if we have all of those concerns and all those questions that Dave talked about. I'm not asking them to like go to the NFC Championship game. All I want that feels different than the last couple years, can you win a playoff game against a team that is not actively imploding? Because their playoff win over the last few years was over that 2023 to Eagles team that's actively imploding.
Yeah.
So show us that you can win a playoff game against a team that is not collapsing in real time, and that with one more year from the young defensive players that you drafted, from all the talent that we have on this team, when we go into 2026, Dave, are they one of those teams that when we do a seat at the table, we don't even talk about them? It's just like, well, of course. I mean, the Bucs are absolutely a Super Bowl contender. That combination of stuff, that's what feels like success to me this year.
And they haven't graduated to that category, to your point.
No.
Like, every year, people aren't sold on the Bucs, and they've been defying those expectations to this point, but you got to keep doing it. And on top of that, if they do last season all over again, if we argue about how good they are for 18 weeks and then they go one and done in the playoffs, like, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. So it's got to be something more than losing control of a game in the fourth quarter of Wild Card Weekend like they did last year.
Thanks for watching The Athletic Football Show. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with us. Like and comment on this video, and we'll see you next time.